President Joe Biden's policies are affecting our daily lives in many ways. Among them, making life more difficult for those who own and operate small businesses. Joining us to discuss the business climate under the current administration is Alfredo Ortiz. He is president and CEO of the Job Creators Network. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
We're going to talk a little bit about the Biden administration and what it's doing, but first of all, remind us the Job Creators Network. What is it and what do you do?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a fantastic national pro-small business advocacy organization. We believe in the beauty and the wonderness of free enterprise. And it was created actually, and the original brainchild of this was Bernie Marcus, who founded Home Depot. And he started with 2 stores in Atlanta. And so he remembers all too well what it was like to be a struggling small business owner, had a great vision, great idea, and look what he became, and now employs over 420,000 people across the country. So it's an amazing, amazing American dream story. But he, again, remembered what it was like to be that small business owner and how tough it was and the struggles they went through. And he always says that if he had an open Home Depot today under the rules kind of the regulatory environment and financial environment, it'd be very, very difficult probably for him to have the same success that he had back then. So he really set up Job Creators Network to be able to help small business owners try to achieve success like he did, and really to try to promote policies that will really enhance the possibilities of success for these small business owners.
Business owners face all kinds of challenges.
Yeah, they do.
Among them, the ones the government puts in front of them, and I know that your group has been concerned about some of the policies under our current administration.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the sad part is that honestly, I can't point to one single policy at this point that the Biden administration has actually put forth to actually enhance or improve the probability of success for small businesses. I've been challenged on this comment once, and someone said, well, what about the Paycheck Protection Program? Because that was put out under the Biden administration. I said, it might have been extended under the Biden administration, but it was actually an idea put out by the Trump administration. So to this date, I haven't seen one single policy that is out there to help small businesses.
When the government puts forward policies that make it harder for the small businesses to operate, what does that mean for them and for the economy?
Look, it really is tough to be a small business. I was actually a small business owner myself, so I know what it's like. I mean, every 2 weeks you've got payroll to hit. You're a little worried because your receivables haven't come in as you expected, so you may be drawing lines of credit, cash advances, you may be going your home equity lines. It's a real struggle. So when you have the government interfering the way it has been, whether it's going to be through, let's say it's higher taxes, which is one of the things that's being proposed to help fund some of this monstrosity of spending bills that are being put forth, or when you have higher regulatory environments, like the vaccine mandate that is being proposed currently, these are all issues and challenges that really minimize the probability of success and just makes it that much harder for small business owners to succeed. And we got to remember that in this country, 2/3 of new job growth is actually in the hands of small businesses. So when you squash them through higher taxes and through a higher regulatory environment, you take away the probability of them continually adding new jobs and really being able to reinvest back in their businesses, which is exactly what we saw with the Tax Cut and Jobs Act back in 2017. We saw small business members do that exactly. They hired more people, they paid them more wages, or they invested right back into their businesses.
You've already mentioned the vaccine mandate. That is something that Job Creators Network and you specifically have been very vocal about.
Somewhat, yes.
Why is this something that causes such a problem for small businesses?
Yeah, so it really actually shows just how tone deaf this Biden administration is really to small businesses. We actually are in the middle of the tour. In fact, today we're basically ending that tour for this year, starting to back up in the spring. It's called the War on Small Business, Bring Small Businesses Back. But it really is Biden's war on small business and this administration's war on small business. And this vaccine mandate is a great example that really shows the separation between, let's say, large companies and small companies. Most large companies, in fact, all of the trade associations that represent that, for example, the U.S. Chamber, are supportive of this vaccine mandate, but are really show their tone deafness as well to the challenges that it presents to our small businesses. If you look, for example, the way the Biden administration has actually portrayed this as a mandate for our country's largest employers, and that is exactly how he's talked about it. I don't know about you, but I think about Coca-Cola, I think about Delta, Wells Fargo. That's what I think when I think largest employers of this country. I don't think about, Joe and Bob's, manufacturing company in Sioux City, Iowa that has 120 people, let's say. But those are the small businesses that are really, really going to be impacted. And let's take a second to remember that even by the government's definitions, the Small Business Administration defines small business as 500 employees or less. So when you have a mandate that's 100 employees or more, that 100 to 500 range is a very, very large swath of small business. And we've estimated it's going to impact tens of millions of employees. And so, but for them, we're estimating, and this comes from a lot of conversations, anecdotal, that they estimate 25 to 35% of their labor force is not going to take the vaccine. And so if you have, let's say, a company that has 150 people, and you're going to lose 30% of that labor force, you're not going to be able to operate with 100 people when you're operating at 150 people. It's a significant impact to their business operations, not to mention the potential fines that they're talking about, $14,000 up to $140,000. I mean, this is absolutely ridiculous, on top of everything else that they have going on. Inflation, supply chain issues, labor shortages. I mean, this is the last thing our small business owners need.
Yeah, just you mentioned at the very end of that answer, the inflation issues, supply chain issues. These, I think, are things that people outside of the business community are seeing. If you're paying more for something when you're buying your products, or you're going to the store and you don't see something because perhaps the supply chain isn't there, or you go to a restaurant or store and don't get the service you're used to because there's no worker. These are things that are not just bad for the small businesses, but for the people they serve.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We were just speaking to a gentleman here in North Carolina, actually has a manufacturing company. He had a fantastic operation kind of pre-COVID, ran almost zero finished goods inventory. His input in terms of component inventories were basically just about a week. All that has actually doubled in time, and his delivery time has increased threefold. Which is a major, major issue for him, because all of a sudden his costs for inventories are going up. And frankly, he's basically just paying whatever it takes to get components in. And so, of course, that just continues to raise his costs of delivery, which, guess what? These small businesses that he delivers to, they're going to have to ultimately pass on these costs to customers. And we're seeing this on the menu. I don't know if you've checked out your restaurant prices and your new menu prices over the past few months, but those have gone skyrocketing. I can't even believe, how small business can survive, or frankly, an average working family can survive going out or even buying groceries anymore.
When this starts hitting people where they live in their pocketbooks, are they going to be paying more attention to the policies and what's going wrong?
Well, I think we've already seen some of the most recent polls, for example, among registered voters, that talks about inflation and rising prices being one of their biggest concerns. In fact, I think 70+% of the people amongst registered voters in that poll said that inflation is their number one concern now.
We've seen voters go to the polls recently, and you and the Job Creators Network actually had a response to the somewhat surprising, to at least the pundits, win of Glenn Youngkin in the Virginia governor's race. What did you take out of that, and how should other politicians respond to what voters said in Virginia?
Yeah, well, I think what Governor-elect Youngkin nailed there and the campaign is that this is about kitchen table economics. And what was really happening there was the conversations that were being taken place. It wasn't about wokeism, at least not from a good perspective, because trust me, there was pushback on the whole CRT and all that, but really was about rising costs. And the inflation, their supply chain issues when they were small business owners. But I think in Virginia in particular, what you saw there was the mama bears and the papa bears rising up to really, quite frankly, protect their children. And this was not just white mama bears and papa bears. We're talking amongst Hispanics, we're talking about, amongst blacks, Asians. I think parents overall were just getting, pretty offended and just fed up with this fact that the government and the school boards were basically telling them, you have no input in terms of how your children are going to be taught. And I think that's just the worst thing that, frankly, any party could choose to decide to do. And so I think the idea that Youngkin picked up on immediately was we got to be able to give parents that ability to have freedom of choice to do what they need to do for their kids and make sure that their kids have the best opportunity possible. I mean, frankly, I love the fact that in his speech there, in his victory speech, he talked about school choice being one of the things that he's going to push for. I think we need to make sure we do that across the board, across this country.
You mentioned that Job Creators Network is working on this war on small businesses. If the war ends the way it should, what do you hope happens in terms of changes in policy?
Well, what I'm hoping is that we see, kind of going back to the Trump administration policies, frankly, which was an environment that had lower taxes, less regulatory overreach and burden, and frankly, an understanding and appreciation of how important small business is to our communities and to our countries. I mean, I don't know about you, but I can't even recall ever seeing so far the Secretary of the Small Business Administrator. I don't know her name anymore. I mean, just not nowhere to be found. And I think that just shows the level of the lack of interest, basically, that this administration has for small businesses. So I hope when we do win this war, against Joe Biden's war on small business, that we have that environment back for small businesses.
Alfredo Ortiz is president and CEO of the Job Creators Network, fighting against this war on small businesses.
Right.
Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And we thank you once again for watching.